Good morning and welcome to the July 17th Pinellas County Tourist Development Council meeting. We're glad to be here on this hot July day inside. I'd like to start introductions with Tony Satterfield.
Tony Satterfield, Alden Suites, St. Pete Beach.
Julie Ward-Pajolski from the great city of Dunedin, representing the Mayor's Council.
Cookie Kennedy, Mayor of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, representing all the beach communities.
George Credicka, City of Clearwater.
Paul Sacco, Interim CEO and President of Visit St. Pete Clearwater.
Karen Seal, County Commissioner and Chair of the Tourist Development Council.
Michael Azas, County Attorney's Office.
Good morning, Charlie Gertis, City of St. Petersburg.
Good morning, Keith Overton, Trade Winds Resorts on St. Pete Beach.
Good morning, Trish Rodriguez, the Tropics Boat Tours, Clearwater Ferry.
Phil Henderson, Starlight Cruises, Clearwater, South Pasadena, and Madeira Beach.
Great, thank you, everyone. I wanted to mention under my chair comments, and I'll have some other comments later when we talk about the capital project funding program. But, we formed the subcommittees for marketing and budget, and due to the next meeting being capital project funding program workshop, we're going to start our subcommittees back up in September. And I just wanted to advise you that kind of put that on your calendar. We'll be having those meetings after the TDC meeting in September. So with that, it's the approval of the Tourist Development Council minutes for May 15th, 2019.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is now time for anybody from the public who wishes to make a comment. Be limited to 3 minutes. Okay, no one wants to make a comment? Very good. County Attorney Report, Michael Zoss.
I have nothing this morning.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
We'll move on to the Lee Event Funding Program. I think we're going to have a presentation. JLL?
No, that's for the capital.
I'm sorry.
No, the elite was just a
The scoring sheet
summary
and-
information
sorry.
that was presented to the board.
So, are there any comments on, you should have received the scoring sheet? Any comments? Do I need to have any approval?
I would ask that the TDC as an entire body approve and make the recommendation to the BCC as submitted.
No?
As I said at the meeting, I haven't done it. I haven't been on the committee for 3 or 4 years, but that ran quicker and smoother than it ever has before, thanks to a lot more organization and every applicant following a certain guideline of how to present things. It made it very easy to review and very easy to understand what they're asking for and very easy to grade. And I think that helped a tremendous amount in getting through that process much faster and with less heartburn than years past. So, thank
Yes,
you
I
for
thought
all
it went very smooth. Thank you, Tim, for that, Ramsberger. Mr. Gertis?
Thank you. I just wanted to say it's my first year since being on the TDC that I wasn't on this committee. And I will no longer be on the TDC in December. And so I wanted to say for the 10,000 people that are watching on television no, but to all of you who participated in this and did the work, I'm so grateful. I've done it for 4 years, and I know how hard it is emotionally, physically, analytically. It's very difficult work when you dive in and go through all the paperwork and all the applications. It's very difficult, and I just wanted to let you know that on behalf of myself personally, because I've done it before, and on behalf of the people of St. Petersburg, I'm very, very grateful for the work that you do. And you should all be thanked by everyone because you don't get paid for it. It's volunteer work. You've signed up to do a service. And I'm tremendously grateful for the hard work that went into it. So that I wanted to make sure that was plain. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I, Madam Chair? Upon consultation with Mr. Zoss, I need to tell the board that I'm going to recuse any votes today or discussion, recuse myself from that because My company is one of the requesters for funding, so I'll abstain from having any comments. So if you have
Okay.
any questions later, I'll be happy to answer them.
Understood, and thank you. Anyone else?
I just want to apologize for having to miss the meetings. I had a personal emergencies that had come up and wasn't able to make it. But to echo what Mr. Gertis said about the hard work that not only the committee does, but also staff in preparing
Yes.
this. So,
Yes, thank you. I-
really appreciate, all the work. It's
Yes.
well worth it.
It was extremely well presented, laid out, and I know Cookie was a little bit late, but she still participated, even though we couldn't have her score. But she sat through the whole thing, and we're
was really-
thankful for that.
It was really great compared to, I've been on the others. It was very smooth. Everybody's correct in what they mentioned today. Beautiful.
Yeah, good.
I would move approval of the scoring sheet as recommended to the Board of County Commissioners.
Second?
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and note that there is one recusal for the record. So, okay, next, now it's more timely, is the capital project funding program. I guess we'll have the report from JLL.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. A lot of you look familiar from the last go-around, the last TDT funding program review. My name's Tom Reifert. I'm with Jones Lang LaSalle out of Atlanta. Again, we were involved during the last process, and here we are again to go through round two. This is my associate, David Holder from New York. He assisted me in reviewing the applications. His background is tourism. He focuses on tourism for Jones Lang LaSalle. So I just wanted to, he wasn't with me last time. This is David. He'll be speaking as well. There's no formal presentation today. What we've done is we completed the summary reports, and which were submitted to all of you. Hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at them. But there were three applications. The first, I'll just give you an overview of them and a summary level view. The first was the Dolly Museum. It's a $38.8 million project. They're requesting $17.5 million, and they have matching funding in place, so they have met that guideline. The expansion includes 10,000 square feet of exhibit space, and new exhibit space, and 10,000 square feet of what I'll call multi-purpose space, which is, includes community space and education space. They're viewing that to be used not only for community education, but also special events, weddings, receptions, things of that nature. Also included is a 150,000 square foot parking garage, which includes 270 parking spaces that would help support the expansion. And in addition, a Skybridge connector from the parking garage to the expanded facility. They're projecting about 26,000 room nights annually related to this expansion, and a range from about 9 million to 13 million in direct economic impact, which includes spending on room nights, it includes spending on restaurants, retail, things of that nature by their new attendees. Secondly is the St. Petersburg Museum of History. It is a $6.8 million project, and they're requesting $2.8 million. At the time we completed the reports, the match was not yet in place. They were still waiting for the state. They're going to go to the state for the 19 and 20 budget process and request their funding then. It's about $1.3 million. Private donations, their goal was 1.7, they're at about 1.3, so they're close on the private donations. And then the city of St. Pete, based on the application, it looked like they've guaranteed about 500,000 of the million as of the time of the report, okay? Their expansion includes 8,000 square feet, and similar to Dolly, it's half of it is exhibit, so new exhibit space, And that's on one level, and then they're planning on a rooftop area of 4,000 square feet. And again, that would be what I'd call multi-purpose space, and they're viewing that as to be used for receptions and private events and things of that nature. The estimate from St. Pete Museum is about 12,000 room nights annually, and their impact is about $5.5 million in direct spending. Okay. Lastly, we have the Tampa Bay Watch Discovery Center, and that is about a $711 million project. It's a build-out. 1,000, sorry. Did I say million? Sorry about that.
That'd be one of the biggest
Everybody's
projects in
heart
Pinellas
stopped.
County.
Yeah, and 450 million is requested from the county. So it's a build out of space on the pier. So the shell is there, and you know, their goal is to basically fit that space to their needs. The match appears to be close, of about 270,000 in place. I'm a little unsure on the city allocation. There was a little question that remained on whether or not, when it will come in and how. They're requesting $300,000 of the $711,000 project. It's about a 3,000 square foot facility, focusing on the Tampa Bay estuary. It's a showcase on the Tampa Bay estuary. It will include exhibit and gallery space and also classroom and catering space. So there are similarities between the three. You know, they're trying to focus on attracting some additional outside visitation through special event space, which is very popular right now, especially in museums. And David, you can probably speak to this as well, but you know, we've interviewed thousands and thousands of event planners and tourist folks, and everybody's looking for something different. They don't want the same thing. A room like this, for example, they're looking for new and exciting space that's a little bit different. And personally, I mean, in the last year, I've probably gone to 3 special events in museums and different spaces like that. So becoming very popular.
Kind of opened up the weddings market. It's just an alternative to traditional meeting space that just creates a whole new market segment for some of these different museums.
Right. With the Tampa Bay Discovery Center, their estimate on room nights is 6,000, which is shy of the guideline. Mm-hmm. The guideline is 10,000 room nights, so I just wanted to bring that up. And their direct impact is roughly 800,000 a year. So that kind of summarizes the 3. You know, our review focused on whether or not, first and foremost, the applications met the guidelines. So we looked at that, and our report covered those spots where we thought, you know, either they may have been a little shy or if they met them. You know, we did not complete our own feasibility study. That really wasn't what this was about. Similar to last time, we reviewed the methodology, their estimates of impact, and we opined on whether or not, you know, we thought they were reasonable. In this case, you know, the majority of, we believe, the majority of, you know, the methodology used was appropriate, and you know, kind of goes in line with some of the studies that we have done and completed in the past. So that's a summary level report from us, and if you have questions, we'd love to open it up and talk about them. We're here for you.
Okay, Tony?
For the St. Petersburg Museum of History, was there any discussion if the state turned them down or didn't give them the funding they're requesting as to what the alternative would be?
To our knowledge, no, not with us. No.
Okay. And I'm going to assume that this would be approved prior to the legislature agreeing to this. Is that the case? If we agreed to this, it would be before they requested and got the grant from the state. Am I correct about that?
I'm going to turn to Charlie. Do you have any information on this by any chance?
Well, yeah, obviously, the state approval is going to come after this vote. So you're absolutely right. I think we've done this on other projects where part of the match was coming from an anticipated state budget allocation. I don't think it's out of the ordinary in that regard. My understanding would be if that failed, if it was allocated and vetoed or it was never allocated at all, the project couldn't go forward. I mean, the balance of the money wouldn't be there. So,
Which is why I
yes,
asked if there was an alternative, if they had any discussion.
Right. I understood your question. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm not aware that they've identified any Plan B or Plan C or Plan B and C. I'm not aware of that. But I think the bottom line is if they don't get that piece of the funding, it doesn't go forward, right?
Thank you, Charlie.
And if it doesn't go forward, our money wouldn't be spent.
Right.
Right.
Which is something that the committee can also consider. Today we're hearing from the consultants about the results of your analysis of it. And it's very well done, by the way. I really appreciate. If you remember, when we first started this, we wanted to make sure we had apples to apples comparison. And so going through all this data is extremely helpful to us to really delineate the direct spending and the other benefits. I'm happy to say that, really all three projects, just using the direct spending numbers pays back pretty quickly in each case. In the Dally's case, it was $9.13 million in direct spending per year. St. Pete History direct was $5.5 million, which I thought was a little bit high, but that's my personal opinion. And Tampa Bay Watch was $793,000 the first year as well. So I think those are all good indicators that this would have the ROI that we've constantly said we want to have on these capital projects. So, are there any other questions for the consultant? I think when the committee deliberates, I know the Dally is not shovel ready yet. I also personally have some concerns if I would like our allocation to go towards the building, not the parking garage, because the building is what is going to bring in the tourist development dollars. Also, they're going to have a revenue stream from the parking garage, and I'm not sure if we want to have that discussion in the committee when it comes to that point in time. On the St. Pete History Museum, the analysis shows that construction was going to begin or could begin in June of 2019. It's July of 2019, so I think we'll ask that question to them and get a little bit more information that can be presented to the committee. And finally, I think with Tampa Bay Watch, just from my analysis, even though it does not meet the room nights, the whole pier experience is going to be bringing tourists in, which this is definitely an incremental asset that tourists will learn about our environment and other important considerations. So, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to provide some context, if I could, and that was a nice segue. Both the Museum of History ask and the Tampa Bay Watch ask, in a vacuum, you might say, well, they don't meet the room nights, and the ROI is maybe questionable. I agree with Chairwoman Seal about the direct spending numbers, and those are always kind of a educated guess anyway. But I do think it's my understanding that for the museum, for instance, part of that space is going to be a welcome center for Pinellas County. And that space could be leveraged to identify all of our wonderful places throughout Pinellas County for marketing and awareness and all that. So I think that's a key. But I do think we have to look at these requests in the context of a $90 million pier project that, and yes, I'm biased, but it's going to be a world-class location, and it's on a world-class piece of geography. There is going to be all kinds of amenities on that pier. I wish maybe Chuck was here because he knows a lot about it also. But I don't want to take a whole lot of time, but I think you do have to remember that the context, the museum is going to be at the entry to the gateway of the pier. So the museum, and the idea was that the construction for the museum would kind of fit into the construction of the approach to the pier, and all that would get done. Unfortunately, I think the timing's not going to work out there. But I think you have to look at, Tampa Bay is in the best condition it's been in over 50 years, and a lot of that is based upon the work of Tampa Bay Watch and what they've done to bring awareness and stewardship to that body of water. And without a beautiful Tampa Bay, the whole waterfront park system of St. Petersburg, much less the pier, doesn't mean anything. I mean, if you've got a brown body of water that nobody wants to go near, why highlight it? Why earmark it? But so I wanted to put context to that. And lastly, the Dali, which is, it's a big ask. There's no question about that, $17.5 million. But I want to share with my colleagues that contextually, well, first of all, this body was the one that took one of the first risks on the Dali when it very first came here. This body allocated $2 million. There wouldn't have been a Dali museum in the city of St. Petersburg or in Pinellas County was it not for the TDC. So that's how important this is to the Dali and I think to the countywide art scene. And what I wanted to say, I'm sorry I'm taking longer than I intended, but I think contextually you have to understand what's happened with the Dali, the Chihuly, the James Museum of Art, the Warehouse Arts District, and the about to open in December of 2019 $90 million Museum of American Arts and Crafts, and the arts engine, the economic engine that the arts are in St. Petersburg and in Pinellas County, Dunedin, Clearwater, everyone is understanding the economic engine that the arts are. And so, what happens is when the Eckelmann sculpture that's going to go up on the pier, she's a world-renowned sculptor. People will come just to see that. And then they'll go to the Dali because the Dali's here. And that's true of all those synergies with the museums that I just named. And I'll just share with you one of the concerns I have about, and this is true, I think, of any dynamic growth paradigm, that people go back to their communities. They go back to what city in the United States or some city in Europe, and the Dali was wonderful, but we couldn't find a place to park. And the pier was wonderful, but we couldn't find a place to eat, or and so these incremental improvements to world-class environments I think, need to be looked at in a larger picture than just this by itself in a vacuum. And I probably could have just said that at the beginning and been done with it. But.
Can I jump in? Perfect segue, and you're both exactly right. Our process was to see if it met the guidelines.
Right.
But you're exactly right. All of these assets add to your community in one way or the other. And when people come down or select a location, I know you're going to agree with me on this. But when people select a location to go, let's just say they're going to the beach, okay? So you have Clearwater Beach. Okay, you've got that. Other people have beaches too, right? Other communities have beaches. But it's all the other things that make your community step up on the rung of the ladder, right? It's all these other things that you have to do when you're here. And whether it's the Dolly or the Discovery Center or the St. Pete Museum, all of those are part of that bigger package. And, you know, it's no different. You can think about when you go on personal vacations. Yes, you may be going to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower, but what else is there to do in Paris, right? You have all these other things, so it's not just one component. They all kind of work together, and they all kind of lift up your community together.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but I think it works the other way too. In the sense that if somebody wants to come to the Dali Museum from Europe, you know, I'm not every man, I'm way below every man. But if it was me and I was going to the Dali, I would be looking for a place on the beach to stay.
Right.
See, so I want to go see this Janet Eckelman sculpture, but I don't want to stay in downtown St. Pete. I want to stay on Clearwater Beach or St. Pete Beach, or because then I get the best of both, right? And I think it works both ways that way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And parking is key. You're right. You know, my personal experience, if I want to go to some place, I might love a restaurant or love the museum, but if there's no parking, you know what?
Right.
I'm not going to go.
I get angry.
Yeah, it's a hassle.
In particular, with the events component of
Believe me, I know.
what's being applied for within this, the events add a critical mass that, you know, museum attendance can come in its ebbs and flows. Events are a critical mass that come and go as a unit, and it creates a different level of parking demand.
That's why the elite events are so important.
Yeah. I'll add one piece to the analysis that we do. It looks at the marketing and media investment of these applicants. And in the case of a museum, global, with the global cachet of the Dali Museum, it brings with it a certain level of media attention, kind of going back to your point, that there are areas of the application, certainly of our review, that fall outside of just the numbers. But we look at that as part of the numbers mix, because this is part of the investment that they provide, the return on investment piece.
Right. And I wasn't saying that parking should be included. I was just making a general comment. You know, that's obviously up to everybody on this board. But
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Mayor Predica?
Thank you. I don't want to disagree with what was said because I actually agree with it. But I do have a problem. Why do we have guidelines if you're saying, well, disregard them in this particular case because of all the other benefits that accrue? You know, if we were to take the Tampa Bay Estuary program and its request and put it in Tarpon Springs, we would not be having this discussion because it would be a standalone facility by itself and it would not meet the guidelines. And so it would be turned down. But now we're saying because it's in a vibrant area that will add something else, let's disregard the guidelines. I'm having trouble working through that.
and that's not a position, you know, we took. We gave the facts.
No,
with what they were.
But we're all we're all agreeing with what Mr. Gerdes said, but it, you know, we forget about this instance of, you know, take this one project and put it someplace else, and what would we be saying?
But actually, I'm going to respectfully maybe disagree. If it was in a standalone location, it might actually bring in more room nights because it wouldn't be counted as incremental. Because it's in a bigger project, it might be in a standalone situation. If it was in Tarpon Springs, it might be actually bringing in more tourists that were making that their destination stop. We don't know that.
We don't know.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, and that's why I'm struggling, you know, understanding, you know, well, we're going to dismiss the room nights because of where it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then why do we have the guidelines?
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I know that the county commission, I particularly asked when we did the last round of capital projects, was that there be some kind of payback in marketing for the county and for the tourist development business. And so that will be one of the criteria, again, moving forward, that each one of these projects has some kind of marketing piece that works for the county so that we do get some value back. So Anyway, are there any further comments or questions for our consultants? Yeah, Bill.
Just on the, what the mayor says makes a lot of sense. The question is, are the guidelines hard and fast rules, or are they Michael?
The guidelines.
Are they just a sense of guide? And if they're just a guideline that, okay, this is kind of what we're looking for, and we put it out there, if you don't meet this, don't bother applying. Some people would read that, it's like, well, we don't have this, so let's not go through all the trouble and waste all their time and our time. Or is it is it something that the public should know, hey, this is what we're kind of looking for, but if you bring something else outside of that can make up for some of these hard and fast numbers, will we look at it? I'm just more curious about the presentation to future potential applicants. And I think his point is well taken. If these are the rules, then these are the rules. If they're just a guideline with a little bit of flex, then we need to make sure that other potential applicants know that.
Well, we'll make sure that the committee looks at all of this and the deliberations, and that's what's interesting. Michael and I have had this conversation. The elite events are firm, fast rules for the most case, unless waived by this board and by the county commission, versus this ended up being guidelines. And so it's a little bit different situation. With that being said, if there's no more questions for the consultants, what I'd like to do is to ask who would like to be on the committee, and let me explain what the schedule is. We're going to have a TDC meeting on August the 21st. We are planning to have the TDC meeting first and have a presentation from Tampa International Airport, the new Amsterdam Delta flight, marketing, and possibly hearing from Santiago Corrado. And that'll be a short meeting. We will start at 9, but I'm scheduling 9 to 1 p.m. because after the TDC meeting, we'll have the capital project funding program review committee meet, review everything, rank them, and then, of course, that'll come back to this board probably September. So if you are interested in serving on the committee and can commit to staying until 1 o'clock that day, please let me know. You can email me or you can tell me now.
I'd be willing.
Tony, Julie? Okay.
How many do you need?
It can be as many as, it could be everyone, it could be just, it's whether you'd like to serve. And you can commit that day from 9 to 1.
Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Not right now.
Okay.
Yes.
Charlie?
Thank you.
Madam Chair, it seems like I can't vote on anything on this committee. Because I've served on the board of Tampa Bay Watch and been heavily involved at the advice of Attorney Zoss, I'm not going to participate in this exercise, but I also have a conflict. I'm actually out of town on that day, so it doesn't work out for me anyway.
You're a busy gentleman.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
I can't, I'm gonna miss the meeting as well, but I also have a potential conflict.
Okay. And then I'll ask
I'm
the
not gonna
others that are not present today whether they wish to be part of it or not. Okay, so that's all the action that we need at this point on that. And so we'll move on to the department reports. And we're having a digital and communications update from Leroy Bridges, our vice president.
Good morning. Excited to share a couple updates from my side of the house. And I'm going to start with some new international research. So for some time, obviously, we've been transitioning, rebuilding kind of our research portfolio. A big piece of that that's been missing for a portion of time is our international research and trying to understand exactly where all of our international visitors are coming from. And we've been working very closely with a number of, of groups to understand what is the best provider, who is the best provider. Tourism Economics is a leader in the space. They work with more than 50 plus destinations across the country, as well as worldwide. We've launched this new international research portal on our partner site. It's obviously an internal tool, but also external as well for our industry partners. It's a dashboard similar to other dashboards we've rolled out. They release this report twice a year, once in the first quarter, late in the first quarter, with preliminary numbers for the prior year. And then later in the summer, late Q2, early Q3, they go back and they reaffirm all of the data based on additional data sets that they're pulling in. So Tourism Economics is a company they use, a national company, an international company, a branch of Oxford Economics. They use a number of sources, including working very closely with the National Travel and Tourism Office, NTTO, flight data, including a lot of the forms that are filled out and processed by international visitors entering the country through customs. They also look at travel patterns by visitors when they, if visiting multiple locations, for instance, Orlando, and then hitting multiple stops throughout the state. So this data is flowing onto partners.visitstpclearwater.com. You can find it by just hovering over reporting, click under International Visitor Report. Obviously, we can provide more in-depth answers to any questions beyond this, but you can sort by particular country of origin. These are going to be the top 50 countries of origin into the United States, not specific top 50 to St. Pete Clearwater. The data is St. Pete Clearwater specific, but they determine the 50 based on total volume into the country. Does that make sense? So it defaults to total international. You can go down here and look. What I love about this data is it gives us a really good view into the past, back to 2008, and a view into the future with projections of travel to 2023. So we can really start to understand a little bit more forecasting what those source markets are bringing. We've got on the left here, top 15 markets of origin, and on the right, spending from those markets. This is data from Visa, and Tourism Economics buys that data and processes it in as well. That's another one of their data sources that they blend together to get to these numbers. So very interesting data, I think, again, helping inform our strategy, our strategic planning, many of the conversations we're having right now internally about priorities, not just today, tomorrow, but also 5 years down the line. So I would encourage, certainly spend some time with it. If you have any questions, feel free, don't hesitate to reach out. Very excited. I know all of our international teams are very excited to finally get our hands on some new international data. Wanted to pivot to our digital marketing performance in May. The department reports and our latest production on the digital marketing campaign side. May is one of our fairly busy months as we transition out of spring marketing and into summer marketing. What this dashboard is an output from Adara. I've talked about Adara before. Adara allows us to pixel all of our advertising and track the bookings associated with the consumers who interacted with or came across an ad. We're not we're not counting attribution, direct attribution, click and book, but we are saying that, obviously our ads and our placements were a part of their journey to book. In May alone, we saw more than $7.7 million in hotel revenue driven through our digital marketing program. That equates to about $500,000 in bed tax just in the month of May alone. All of this data is available in our department report monthly. We do put this out there along with what programs we're running in May. Again, a pretty robust program from the likes of Pandora to Connected TV, obviously paid search, paid social, et cetera. We spent, just to give you an idea, of the $7.7 million in hotel revenue generated, we spent about $250,000 in May to drive that production. As we look forward, we are launching our annual Travel Zoo campaign with a number of hoteliers in the destination. As you guys recall, this is a program I've talked about a decent amount. We're essentially taking bed tax and generating bed tax with it. It's zero cost to our hotels to participate. We cover all commissions and marketing with Travel Zoo. Last year's program generated more than $500,000 in hotel revenue direct bookings to the hotels. We've gotten out of the box much earlier this year. Really, my focus is August, September, October, November. I know that based on bed tax and feedback from hoteliers, that's obviously the need time. And so trying to spend our dollars, more and more of our dollars in those need periods versus rolling out a program in February or January, February, March, affecting those times when obviously occupancy is at its highest. So we've got, I think, 10 different hoteliers loaded up across, very good cross-section of the destination from Clearwater Beach down to St. Pete Beach. We also have, for the first time, an attraction involved with this program. Clearwater Marine Aquarium has an offer, and we're still waiting on 2 more hoteliers to get their offer loaded. So again, this program, Direct Sale Travelzoo, is one of the largest bookers of hotels out there. I think for a long time people have viewed it as discount and deals, but they have a very rarefied group that is affluent and has a high propensity to travel, obviously. Looking forward to see the progress and the success of this program. I'm optimistic that we'll see even better returns than we've seen the last 2 years. A couple highlights from what we've been up to. Any questions? We'll provide an update, Mayor Kennedy, and for those who are interested in the rental data, the data set we've talked about in terms of rentals, we are working with finalizing a contract with AirDNA to get that data. I know it's still in progress, but we are inching closer, I'm confident. So that's to come.
Leroy,
Yeah.
I continue to struggle with having the ability to decipher how much of our, how much revenue in the total, I'm getting a little bit off base from your project here, but it's related to social media and it's related to how you, how the value comes back to us. Have we got any plans to get a little deeper into the numbers related to what's going to VRBOs, Airbnb, HomeAway, those kinds of rentals? Because I sense when we look at the Smith Travel Research reports on a regular basis that they're siphoning off a larger percentage of our room nights, which ultimately is in many cases escaping the bed tax collection.
Sure.
So I'm just wondering if we have a plan to get more focused data on that.
Yes, certainly. So that is exactly perfect segue right there. With the AirDNA is going to give us that exact look. So think STR for rentals of that nature. So we will be able to. I've thought I don't have the data yet, and the contract's not finalized yet. We did get approval from Paul to move forward with that, and so we're working on it. In my concept, we would be probably producing an STR report similar to what we're doing, an AirDNA report, and probably trying to do a bit of a hybrid of the two. I will note that because of the agreements the tax collector has with those providers, that we're receiving the bed tax from it, but it's not quite being captured in the STR report. And the potential impacts of that STR report aren't represented. So AirDNA is going to take us a really far along that path in that conversation, no doubt.
Yeah, just to comment on that. Now, I don't know that I totally agree with you that they're all paying the bed tax. So that my point is that while we have a deal with Airbnb as an example, they're one of many players in the market, and I still am deeply concerned that all of the efforts we're putting forth, the great numbers that you're putting up here, a lot of these guys are riding on the coattails of these efforts and they're not paying their share. And I just want to make sure that we're focused on that and that there's efforts being made to identify it.
Yeah, I shouldn't, obviously not characterize all, obviously the largest providers. And I think the AirDNA data, I'm hopeful it's going to give us a view into what that volume's like. That really understanding from month to month what the total availability, number of units, how many, occupancy. It's going to give us all of the similar STR metrics. So occupancy, ADR, RevPAR, all of those things. So we'll start to be able to compare a little bit apples to apples, and potentially be able to track those effects as well. I know they have AirDNA offers compression type reporting. So if you see ADR spike in St. Pete Beach, you can start to see that compression in AirDNA, the bookings going up and their rates going up likewise. I think it'll give us a really good handle on that conversation. Yep.
Just to go along that, will it also show you where? I don't mean exactly, but like what city?
Yes.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
so
Jesus.
we will have access to countywide data. I don't believe we'll have access to, I'm confident we don't have access to addresses, right?
No,
But-
I'm not looking for that.
But
I'm
they
just
will,
looking- but
they,
I mean, that's something that we've all been, I mean, right now, you can track that type of data for hotels, or traditional,
Correct.
traditional overnight stays, but we can't. And so I know a lot of times if a city is, like I've seen you report, which cities are contributing to the bed tax, you know, and you've got a lot of smaller cities
Yep.
that might not have a lot of hotels, but have more STRs.
Yeah.
So you know, I think it's important. But I also wanted to comment, Keith, that in our city, we've just finalized an agreement a couple of months ago with a company, and I'm sorry I can't think of the name of it. And they, through code enforcement, they are able to search everything that is online, you know, VRBO, HomeAway, Airbnb, and all of that, and pinpoint to tell you, is it zoned, is it in the proper zone? And if it isn't, it kicks out a list. It will even tell you where they all are. So I think following up on those types of tax things are becoming easier.
Right. I think there's two issues there. You're pointing out one of the two. There's a collection issue, who's escaping it, and then there's an issue of, does the data represent that segment? Even if they are reporting it, does it represent that segment fairly? So I think there's two issues, and they're both really important. So
yeah, and my objective, obviously, with the dashboard, the business intelligence tools to visualize, so not just hand you guys a spreadsheet and say go for it, is that we would, similar to the bed tax, you know, report, be able to track by municipality, by type, be able to track the, again, ADR, we'll visualize it. We do get some back data as well, so we'll be able to track some trending.
When do you think this will be
That's a
completed?
good question. Hopefully, within the next couple months, we'll have access to the data and get a dashboard live.
Maybe by the end of the year.
Yeah, and then, thank you for that. By the, yes.
Government, you know.
And then, yes, and then we'll be able to, we'll be providing updates similar to bed tax and STR on a monthly basis for that.
But that would be great because it's going right into season. So that's important to be able to have that, capture that.
Just to clarify a little bit on who AirDNA is, they are just a private data company. Many have asked me, why doesn't Airbnb just do what they do? Obviously, terms of service, so AirDNA has developed technology to be able to scrape. Obviously, as all of those rates and availability has to be public for people to book. So they have the technology to scrape the entire site on a regular basis and acquire that data. They can tell if just because you have a listing lot or available, but it's not available to book, occupancy and things like that. So, and they haven't shut them down because, well, the site has to be available. So there's a little bit of a capitalism technology data at play there.
sure.
And just kind of
I did
to-
have a discussion and an email. I'll go back and see if I can find it with our tax collector, with Charles Thomas, to try to drill down more into this. And kind of basically in a nutshell, under state law, they can't do that. So what you're doing is a way around.
Which is awesome.
which they've obviously grown quite a bit in the tourism space because it's, you think about some destinations, STR means nothing. I mean, at least for us, it represents about, what I would say, about 60% of our rooms. Some destinations, it's going to be next to nothing because they just don't have the properties participating. So it's a very valuable tool. I'm looking forward to it. And really just to put it out to the board, I mean, it's one of many different tools we're obviously getting our hands on and acquiring, but I'm all ears, very open to suggestions and other paths forward with different data sets and questions that you have that you don't feel like are being answered. Just certainly let me know.
Just one other comment. I know we haven't, we've looked at the budget and gone through it in detail, and I don't think we've had a final vote on it, but as just a gesture, I would highly recommend that if you feel strongly that we need to invest more money in finding this analysis and this data, that you come back with a plan to do that. I think Chairwoman Seal is correct. We're gonna, if we rely on the tax collector, we're gonna probably not get a long way with there. So I think we're gonna have to get this data and give it to them and, help them shepherd that process along a little bit.
Appreciate that. Paul's been great at obviously supporting any of my asks so far, so.
Yeah. Don't hesitate to speak up because
Thank
that's
you.
really an important issue.
Appreciate that.
You wrote, thank you, and I'm so glad because I know I've been bugging you since the gentleman from Airbnb came, what, a year and a half ago to talk to us about it. Because in our city, we lost our grandfather clause, and then from there, we started a file, and even the city of Clearwater, they have 11 code enforcers. We have one with 2 assistants. And the ones that are not on the books, which you are talking about, Keith, it's very difficult because you have to find if they may not be using any of those agencies.
Sure.
So that's another problem that we're having. So I look forward. I hope you will keep
one-
up and let us know when you get the information.
One last comment. I'm sorry to beat this drum so loudly, but it's really bugging me. So what's concerning me more than just the Airbnb and the VRBO model now is that they have partnered with the traditional .coms.
Yes.
And so these intermediaries now, if, for example, we have 288 condominiums. They're owned by individuals that, in some cases, they want to go out and market them themselves. Even though that's not part of their agreement, they're not allowed to do that. And so what's happening now is you have Orbitz and Expedia and, the major players scraping these sites, picking those rates up, and they're in direct conflict with our own website and our own rate parity. And so they're really disrupting the market in a bad way. And I don't have a problem with them conceptually, but they got to play by the rules. And to the degree that you can help us with that and give us data that supports better decisions, that's very important. So.
You bring up a good point. Obviously, the .coms, they've been trying to figure out a way to kind of disrupt Airbnb and the likes after being disrupted, and they're starting to get into that of featuring similar product. So, yeah, happy to help.
Thank you for your time on that.
Yeah, thank you guys. That's all I have.
Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Leroy.
Thank you, Laura.
And I just want to mention that the rest of Visit St. Pete Clearwater Department reports are on file at partners.visitstpeteclearwater.com. And next we'll move into Visit St. Pete Clearwater Interim President and CEO report. Paul Zacco.
So here to give you your snapshots. You received this report ahead of time, and we go through this every month. So this is kind of a wrap-up of probably the end of a very good spring for the tourism community. You can see that rooms sold, our average daily rate, RevPAR, have all gone up year over year for the months of April. Specifically, when you look at rooms sold, 6.8% year over year. Other than the Florida Keys and Sarasota, we're leading the pack for April for a percentage change in that area. In the ADR area, discounting Bay County's recovery numbers, Pinellas is second behind Naples for rate of change there at 4.4%. When you look at RevPAR, again, discounting Bay County's recovery, Pinellas is leading the state in RevPAR at 12.1%. So the pages behind that give you the details in every one of those areas. Your year-to-date, again, we're up in every category. Rooms sold at 2.9%, ADR 4.1%, and RevPAR 8.1%. So the numbers continue to increase, and we're continuing to ride that wave. When you look at the actual TDC or TDT collections for the month of May, year over year, we're up 13.2%, which is an incredible number. In year to date, when you're looking year over year, we're up 6% over last year. So just looking at the projections through the balance FY19, it looks like we're going to exceed $60 million for the year. It would be a first for TDT collections. So we're on an outstanding trajectory with that spend or with that collection.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll pause there to see if there's any questions on that portion of the report.
All great news. Any questions?
Well, I had a kind of an off-the-wall question. By the way, I love our new partner site. It's not so new anymore, but I mean, I really love it, and I dig into it a lot. And I was curious: is there a way to figure out? And I guess you might have to do this by actual bed nights. But is there a way to figure out how many visitors we get every year, and that tracked from previous years?
Yes.
I'm assuming you just have to look at the rentals or whatever, right? Or how do you do that?
I will say just off the top that it will vary based on which research venue you ask, based on a bit of the methodology. We do have, on our partner site, we have a visitor profile report. And we have a 2018 annual that will detail destination analysts' work at that number of visitor count. Let me toggle to it real quick, and I can just walk you briefly through it. That's not it.
Because I know we look a lot at the money side of it, which is really important for our roles and for the people that are, participating. But I think the numbers, the actual number of people coming here, I think tells our residents a lot. And I'll keep repeating myself. I said this at our workshop. They're complaining about traffic congestion and so it would be great to be able to talk about the actual number of people coming too.
Sure. So under reporting, again, on the partner site, visitor profile study, you may notice some changes on this page. I've actually had them start to visualize some of the data. We've built now, so you can, again, start to track trends. You can adjust this by quarter. But every quarter, we report on the number of visitors for that quarter. So obviously, it's a little behind in terms of reporting on that. But Q1 of this year, we had a little more than 3.4 million visitors. That's going to consider both day trip and overnight visitors. So if you scroll down, if you don't want to look at the visualized form, you can access all of these reports below. So quarter one here, and I'll scroll down real quickly. We have an overview chart which breaks it down by number of visitors, direct spending, economic impact, taxes, and obviously hotel nights, and also industry payroll.
Is somewhere in here this year, last year?
Yeah,
or like a couple of years. And I mean, I don't want to waste anybody's time. I just needed to know where to find it.
Yeah, so we have the 2018 annual report is right here. I will say that with the change of vendors, it's, again, methodology is very apples to oranges. And so as of right now, we have the quarter-to-quarter growth that we're tracking, and we have a full 2018 look, but we don't have 2018 versus 2017 at this stage. I could provide you a 17 number, but it was developed by another research vendor, and again, I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable comparing a year-over-year growth per se.
So going forward, I just think it's something important for us to watch because it affects so many other things.
Would you want that included in the snapshot that's being provided every month?
I think that would be great because I think it tells a lot about other things that are going on.
So one of the things I will mention, we only report on the spending and the visitor count once a quarter.
That's
to
fine.
allow us plenty of time to actually compile the data. So quarterly, certainly,
I don't think anybody really needs it.
we can add a slide to summarize those that
Be
same
great.
chart.
That'd be great.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect, yep.
All right. Very good.
Talk about ethics.
Code of ethics.
All right. So the Visit St. Pete Clearwater is going through an accreditation process for destination marketing. Part of that accreditation requires a review and adoption of a code of ethics at this board levels. So this was sent ahead of time, so we wanted to actually put this before you and actually get a review and consideration and a vote from you to adopt the code of ethics at this level that would translate down to the organization and how we operate. And if we can get that from you, that would be a large check in the box for Terry as she shepherded us through this process. It's at like one of 120 or something steps or something. Yeah.
So are you just looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, great.
Thank you very much for that.
And finally, I just wanted Paul to kind of, he did send out an email already about the intergovernmental questions on some of the issues that came up at the budget workshop, but is there anything else that you wanted to share?
Sure, yeah, we did send the email out for the intergovernmental charges. We talked, there was some information on the film incentive program guidelines as well as Latin Americans budget. I think Tony asked for that information, so hopefully that met your needs. If not, we'll be happy to provide more. Wanted to provide some follow-up to some other actions that were listed coming out of the workshop. Chamber funding, there was a recommendation to increase the funding to $500,000. That is listed in the proposed budget. The proposed budget will be rolled up and will go to the BCC for consideration in September. But that is in there. Next was a recommendation to increase funding by $500,000 in the meeting conventions area. So I can tell you that a decision package was generated for that, which is our internal process for the additions of funds or staffing. And that package has been put together, has been sent to the county administrator who has reviewed and approved. So that is actually in the proposed budget going forward. Now, I'd like to give you a little bit of detail around that, on how that decision package was put together. The funding was to target state of Florida opportunities. And we're actually going to start this as a pilot project. So we're not going to hire a staff member out of the gate. We're going to hire a temporary position, if you would, to kind of pilot so we can kind of gauge the effect of this program. And we're targeting 15,000 additional room nights with this effort. And there's no net overall increase to the department's budget in that we're going to reallocate funds that were set for a Chicago representative. We're actually moving meetings, conventions, staffing to cover that territory that was doing some of the state of Florida stuff, but they're going to move and cover that territory in the Midwest. And we use this temporary person to primarily look at the state of Florida. And then the balance of funds would be coming from those funds not used in the elite funding area for this year, since the recommended funding was less than what was into the budget that was provided to you originally. So there's no net increase to the budget for that portion. So again, that'll be in the proposed budget that'll go before the board in September for their consideration and approval. The digital marketing piece, we haven't shared specifically back with the group. You know, Leroy mentioned the information that we got from Adaro. He's gotten that information, and a decision package was put together to increase digital spending for FY20 by an additional $1 million. So with that, we were looking at the data, and for the 6-month period, the data indicates that there was a $32 million receipt in hotel revenue, which translated into just under $2 million in TDT collections. The FY19 digital marketing budget, so this year we're at $2.55 million. So in FY20, that would be going to $3.55 million. Using the data that we see now, there's a confident projection by staff that we're going to continue to generate an additional $16 to $20 million in hotel revenue for the balance of the year, which would translate into an additional $1 to $2 million in TDT collections. So again, we're very comfortable in requesting the $1 million in FY20 based on the data that we're seeing right now. We know that that additional investment will yield more in hotel revenues to collect the TDT, as well as the direct spending that'll far and exceed the $3.55 million that we will be putting out in the digital area. And you can see with the data collection that Leroy and the contracts that we have in place, it's really the easiest area that we can see the effect of that spending in marketing. So that has been put together and put before the county administrator. I'm waiting to hear back for his approval. If he's good with that, I'd like to bring that back to the TDC for their review and recommendation, and then it will be put into the proposed budget going forward. So that's kind of in flight. The monies for that would be a combination of the balance of some elite funding, and then also monies would have to be pulled out of reserves to make that happen. We can't continue to just absorb that cost from FY19's monies that are unused. So there would be some monies being pulled out of reserve to make this one happen.
May I ask a question? Going back to the meetings and conventions additional spend of $500,000, approximately how much of that money will be available to be for incentives to planners and groups coming to the market?
I want to say that was like 350,000, Terry,
Okay.
in and around.
Yeah, thank you for working that out. That's great.
Whoa. It's, Tony?
I'm very happy to hear that that we took Leroy's recommendation on the digital marketing. I totally agree that that is one area where you can really get some hard numbers against it. That's certainly a trend in the hotel industry. So I'm real happy to hear that.
Yeah, I'm still learning here, but Leroy's been providing some very good information. He and his team, if you listen and look at the data, we're probably behind in what some of the other destinations are doing in this area. So we'll look at to try to continue to close this gap is what we do in the traditional areas. I think as we go through our strategic planning processes and kind of look at some of this, we'll get a better understanding of what that balance needs to be and how much money needs to continue to be put into these areas. And certainly you all be an input to making that happen when we go through that process. Next up is the film incentive. I know there was some information shared, recently in the media. No secret here, this was provided to you all in the budget workshop. We're including, $600,000 additional, and it's really for the Hallmark films that we see coming down the line. And again, this is a film incentive that's done on a reimbursement basis. So if those films do not come or they don't meet the targets that we're looking for, that money would not be spent. And that money's already in the budget. It's not, it was relayed that it was additional monies. We didn't pull money out of reserve. We absorbed that in the existing budget that Visit St. Pete Clearwater has. And again, being a reimbursement basis, I just want to make sure for this board and those that are watching that it's not additional monies that were put into the budget. It's monies that we absorb that are being kind of earmarked for those films if they take place. Okay. And then lastly, Commissioner Seal mentioned that the subcommittees would be starting up again in September. There were two items that I kind of earmarked there, which would require some discussion. The first is kind of guidelines, which would require the subcommittee's review for changes to an approved marketing plan and or the dollar thresholds for any new incentives that come through. So again, the TDC and the subcommittee roles being invited to be part of that process and kind of help develop what the marketing plans are going forward. We are cautious that we wouldn't be changing those plans without, the subcommittee's review and approval on those things. We just need to kind of understand the guidelines that go around that. So we want to make sure that we visit that and tighten that up. And then the second item that would be earmarked is the $1.2 million existing in the sports marketing area in the proposed budget. You all asked that we have an opportunity to kind of discuss and talk through those items as well. So they'll also be tabled in the subcommittee discussions that would be coming forward in September. That's all I have for a report. As a follow-up, I don't know if I've missed anything or there are items that you're interested in.
The only other thing that we had a discussion at the budget committee was what they call the opportunity funds, and maybe is that what you meant with your marketing program, that we would address those guidelines as well?
Well, I think there were two items with opportunity. One was changing the wording on opportunity to make sure that was done. And then I think the opportunity funds is part of that. Yes, we would have that discussion that if there were discretionary things that would come through, at what level would they require a review of the subcommittee, or are they things that staff can just blast out on if they were small enough and, we just wanted to act quickly. We still need to maneuver in this world, and we've talked through that as well and what we need to do.
Okay. Thank you for the update. It was just good because, we left that meeting and had a lot of very good discussions, but it's just good to kind of close the loop.
Sure. I apologize you didn't get that ahead of time. I was on vacation last week and just found out Monday that that's what you wanted.
I
so
know.
Still not on the
Sorry.
computer on Tuesday, so.
Can you send that to us? Can you just
Absolutely.
scan that and send it to us? Be great.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Madam Chairman, as elected officials, we all have constituents who know more than we do, or if we don't provide them the information that they seek, think that we're trying to hide something. I have a gentleman in the condominium that I live in who believes that there's a state statute that requires two-way radio communications for fire departments to be upgraded. And his belief is that the TDC has a responsibility to pay for that upgrade if needed in my condo because of the Big C Gulf Boulevard beautification project. And he does not understand that this is an unfunded mandate. And I've been copying you, he does not even realize, Madam Chairman, that you're the chairman of the county commission, that you are the chairman of the TDC, and that you circulate your letters to all of your colleagues on the Board of County Commissioners. So he may be reaching out to y'all seeking TDC capital projects funds to upgrade not only the condo that we're in, but all condos on Sand Key. And I tried to explain to him that this would even apply to all high-rises, whether they are on the beach or in downtown St. Petersburg or any place else in the county. And I'm just alerting y'all because he is, as he quoted himself, a persistent cuss. And I apologize to y'all. I apologize to him. He's now mad at me because I haven't given him your specific names and email addresses. And I've given him the websites where he can look everybody up. But I'm sorry.
I appreciate you bringing that up today because actually I was going to have a conversation either with Michael or with Jewel White, with our county attorney, so that we gave a legal response to that question. I'm not sure I can address the, Gulf Boulevard penny monies question that he keeps bringing up as well, but I can definitely address the TDC piece.
Thank you.
So,
Would he like us to fix his roof too?
I didn't realize you were in the same condo.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Bonus plan.
Okay. Thank you so much for that comment. Is there any other board member comments?
Just want to ask, tomorrow I think there's a affordable housing meeting you mentioned.
Oh, and transportation funding, yeah.
The last meeting with the BCC. I put it on for tomorrow. It's,
I had it on my calendar. I was going to ask that question as well.
The transportation meeting?
Yeah, the housing and transportation, affordable housing.
Is that here?
That is here
At 9?
at 9:30.
Okay, 9:30.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. We
Yeah, for 8:30.
all of our
At
commission
9:00.
meetings either start at 9:30 or 2 o'clock.
Got it.
So, okay, so, yep, it is here, and I believe the presentation is probably posted at this point on county commission agendas, if you wish to review the presentation, if you can't be here, if you have any feedback. And just so that you're assured, on behalf of the county commission, we had asked the cities to give us kind of a list of, if we looked at the gas tax, what are your needs? We've received some replies, but we don't necessarily need it at this point because we'll probably have plenty of time to really ratchet into those figures if we need to. But for those who have already, cities that have already replied, we're thankful for the information. Yes.
I was sending out the Mayor's Council agenda today, and I had it on there. Do you want me to just take it off? Or do you want me to go ahead and ask them to keep?
Send it if you have it, yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you another question. I can't remember now. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. With that, we are adjourned, and the next meeting is August 21st, 2019, and I thank you all for your time.